Level up your LA Kings experience with Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access and rewards. Enjoy great seats to the game in Section 103 along with Yamava Club access and parking included with your purchase. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings shop item at the game. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn perks on each purchase from the only leading ticket company with a rewards program. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings. Did you know the LA Kings have their own culinary partner? It's Superfood, celebrating 10 years and over 1 million meals served. Since 2020, the Kings have trusted Superfood to fuel their players. Now through Simply Lunch, you can bring that same performance-driven food to your office. Because when people eat better, they work better. Visit mysuperfood.com. That's mysuperfd.com. Or call 213-973-6145. Qualified companies can enjoy a free lunch for up to 10 managers.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
We are continuing our summer evaluation. We're here to talk about goalies today, and joining me, Bill Ranford. Thanks for joining me, Bill.
Well, thanks for having me on.
I want to start out with talking about Darcy Kuemper because I didn't realize. I think I don't remember if it was Jim Hiller or somebody else in the organization that sort of conceded early on in the season that there was a stumble out of the gate, that the season didn't start. The team didn't get off to like a great start in the first, 3-4 games. But after that, between the start of the season and December 16th, Darcy Kuemper had a 10-6-6 record with a .917 save percentage and a 2.19 goals against. Then had the collision with Rantanen. Is it as simple enough to say that that collision with Mikko Rantanen affected Darcy Kuemper's season?
Well, there's no doubt it affected his season, but I think it was kind of a combination of a couple of things. Obviously, that didn't help. Anytime you have a concussion, it's going to take some time for the brain to heal. And then number two, I think it's kind of a three-pronged one. Obviously, the injury affects anybody. It's a brain injury, so we have to be conscious of that. Number two, I think with the Olympic team on the line, probably came back a little earlier than he should have. And then he goes over to participate in the Olympics and barely practices, doesn't have any game time. Obviously the time change, coming back, wanted to get back in games, probably hurried back into games. And I just don't think he ever really got, really back on track after that injury. Is it an excuse? Yeah, you could maybe call it an excuse, but we don't really know how the brain works. Specialists do, but I don't.
Sure.
We didn't really look at concussions the way they do now in the time that I played. There was just starting to be an awareness at the end of my career about concussions. And, in my time, you were looked upon as soft. And we realized the number of concussions that happened in the 80s and 90s when I played affected a lot of guys. And we just didn't really take care of ourselves when they happened. And now there's a great system put in place so that players aren't called soft. There's testing done. There's baseline testing. And now we have facts on when guys are ready to play. And, some guys take longer than others. And I think in Darcy's situation, I think just the combination of those three things, he just never really got back on track. And yeah, like for a year and a half, we have to understand that Darcy had Vezina-like numbers for a year and a half. And then, kind of things didn't go as well as he would have wanted or the team wanted after the Olympics.
Well, that's kind of why I brought up those numbers up until the collision with Rantanen, because in the 2024-25 season, he was obviously a Vezina finalist. He had a .922 save percentage. And, I'm certainly one of the people who said heading into this past season, the likelihood of him repeating that season, just based on age and regression and, just it's hard to be that good 2 years in a row. It felt unlikely. And yet, if you look at, like I said, the first 23 games of his season, 917 isn't 922, but it's close enough that it's
Oh,
close enough.
yeah,
He was playing
absolutely.
great.
Yeah, and we didn't get off to a great start as a team, but he was giving us Vesna-like goaltending. And if there would have been an All-Star game, he would have been on the All-Star team with those numbers. But we have to kind of move on from it and focused effort this summer that he's getting ready to go and healthy and ready and raring to go to start off next year the way he did this year.
There was also a coaching change. Now, I understand that Mike Buckley didn't change. Jim Hiller to DJ Smith changed. But the style of play in front of the goalie did change. And everything we've heard, anytime a new goalie comes to LA, whether it's Darcy Kemper or Cam Talbot or whoever it is, one of the conversations that is had with them, with the media in their first availability is the team plays a goalie-friendly style. So is that going to help you out? And every goalie says, yeah, the Kings play a defensive first system, and that's going to help my play. Of course it will. When the coaching change happened, it was right after that Olympic break that you mentioned. The Kings scored a lot more, but they also allowed a lot more and more chances. And I'm sure that also probably didn't help. But how much of a factor is that in a mid-season coaching change on the goaltending numbers?
It's a big factor. Realistically, Darcy's win-loss record was barely different from the first half. It's just his goals against went up and his save percentage went down, but his record was about the same. But you're under the microscope in that second half of the season because the real hockey starts, and not that the first half isn't real, but it becomes crunch time, and you get into that playoff mode the last month and a half, 2 months of the season, and it's hard hockey to play. So surely the change affected the goalies a little bit, but it's our job as a staff to do our best to help them adapt. But there's no doubt it did affect, a guy like Darcy that's, relies on reading plays, big body, not as athletic as some of other goalies in the league. So he relies on his play reading, and we did open it up a little bit more in order to be able to score. But then it also more pucks ended up in the back of our net. So it's just a learning curve, and that's the job of Mike and myself and our department and our goalies to adapt.
This summer, obviously, the Kings have a lot of tough decisions to make. They have to decide what to do about head coach. Andrzej Kopitar is retired. The health of Darcy Kemper looms over the summer. But as you said, now that's a season and a half of really, honestly, like exceptionally unexpected play out of Darcy Kemper. We don't know how brains work. We don't know what the healing curve is. I'm sure we don't even necessarily have a full picture of just how bad it was with Darcy Kemper, because he was able to come back and play, and he had good nights. It wasn't like he was.
I think he's if not 100% fully recovered, he's really close, and he's going to tell you straight out he's coming back next year, to gain that Vesna-like goaltending that he gave us for a year and a half, and we have the full confidence in Darcy, and that's what we're going to get.
During his exit interview, a couple people were taken by surprise at his response when asked about his playing time in the playoffs. He said it with a big smile on his face, and so it didn't shock me at all, and I wasn't offended or anything. He was asked, how did it feel not playing in the playoffs? And he said it sucked. But he said it with a big, of course it did, right?
Absolutely.
No shock there. And like I said, he didn't say it in a way that felt petulant or sulking. He was perfectly, I think he understood.
We're the, number one goalies are wired to play. Mm-hmm. And Darcy's no different. He's been he started off in the league as a number 2, and now he's a number 1, and he's a number 1 for a reason, and you're wired that way. And if you're number one and you're sitting on the bench at a key time, which is the playoffs, you're not going to be happy. I think I would have been more upset if he didn't react that way. But he's a proud person. He's a proud guy. Great human being. Supported Anton Forsberg throughout the first round, and that's he's a professional. He's a pro, and he approached it like a pro. But is he happy? Absolutely not. I wouldn't be. That's your time. That's your special time is the playoffs, and it was unfortunate that he didn't get an opportunity to play this year in the playoffs. But I'll tell you what, he's going to come back with a point to prove to everybody.
So let's move then the conversation to Anton Forsberg. I have an uncle who lives in Ottawa who might be, and listen, apologies to my uncle here, but might be one of the least fun people to talk about hockey with.
Yeah.
So my image of Anton Forsberg coming in was colored by that of an angry, excitable Senators fan. But I was really impressed with Anton Forsberg this season. I thought we get a defensive system, goalie-friendly system, but I thought he really earned his crown.
Ottawa has not been a goalie-friendly place for a number of years, and that's what happens when you go through a rebuild, and it's hard to play in front of a team that went through as many changes that they went through, and they no different than Buffalo, the number of goalies they've gone through, and they're finally both teams are finding their way in that Eastern Conference to now be a competitive playoff team, but. You're always going to point to the goalies because they're the ones that are picking the puck out of the back of the net when things don't go well. So that we as a goalie and playing a long time in the league, I understand that there's no middle ground. You're either the hero or you're the GOAT, and there's no middle ground. And you learn that from a very young age, and that's no different than the talk in Ottawa. Obviously, probably they weren't happy with the goaltending, but it also gave us a great opportunity to go out and get a real quality number one quality person and a good number two goalie that has had chances in his time when needed to go into that number one role. And we did a lot of work on him and talked to a lot of people and did our due diligence, and you know what? He did a great job for us. It took him a little bit of time early on in the season to get used to our team, and once he settled in, he gave us great goaltending, and especially down the stretch when we needed to get into the playoffs.
Let's talk about that curve, because I'm sure it's a coincidence, but it seems really odd that as Kemper's season started to ebb, Forsberg's season started to flow. Like, it just felt like you could never have two goalies this season that were both, putting up solid numbers at the same time. Is that just coincidence? Is there an explanation for that?
I think sometimes as a backup, didn't do it very often in my career, but it's really hard to do. But I think the fact that Anton started to get a few more starts, you obviously, with experience and with games, you get more comfortable within your own game, and I think that's what we started to see with Anton. Obviously, Mike Buckley did a lot of work with him in the first half of the season to get him where he was at in the second half of the season, and kudos to both guys. Mike finding the ways to a little bit of tinkers with his game, and Anton for putting the work in, and you're going to need no different than 3 years ago when we had Phoenix Copley come up and step in when the injury to Jonathan Quick and just absolutely take over and get us in the playoffs. Well, this was a little bit a shorter timetable, but obviously Anton came in and did a job for us, and that's what his job is. Whenever you're needed, you play, and I think as he got playing more games, as he got more and more comfortable with playing in front of our guys.
two wildly unfair questions here to end this, and you feel free to tell me no comment on both of them. First one, the playoff sweep at the hands of Colorado drew a lot of comparisons to the sweep in 2018 at the hands of the Vegas Golden Knights. That was a much lower scoring series, but in it, Jonathan Quick sort of stood on his head and kept those games close. How do you compare Forsberg's effort against Colorado to that 2018 series?
Well, all you have to do is look at what's happening in the next round. We did an unbelievable job keeping the highest scoring team in the league in check. There was basically almost as many goals scored in the very first game of the second round than in our whole series combined. So that just tells you there that our group understood. They got the memo. They understood that we couldn't get into a fire wagon style up and down the ice, super offensive series against Colorado. We had to check, and we had to check hard. And, we are in every single game. We just came up short, and, it was unfortunate. I think, if you look at the series and if with the addition to Panarin and a healthy Kevin Fiala, and maybe we might have been able to squeak out one or two games and really make them uncomfortable. But credit to Colorado, they stuck with it in a tight game and found ways to win, and we didn't.
Next question, and this is a little future based. So next season, you've got Kemper, Forsberg, Portillo, Slukinski, and now George, all under contract and all available. Difficult decisions this summer in the goaltending realm, as in your new role as director of the goaltending department.
Yes.
How much impact do you have on how you distribute those 5 goaltenders?
Well, obviously, there's going to be lots of conversation this summer. It's not a bad thing. We have been, we went a stretch where we didn't have anybody kind of in the goalie chain, young guys up and coming. We had to go out and get Portillo, and then we finally were able to, through the draft, find actually 3 pretty good goalies that have all played at the World Junior level, in obviously George and Slukinski, and then we also have the young Rippinen playing in Finland, and back-to-back years he's been the starter as a young goalie, which is impressive, playing in the top Finnish league. So we now have we now have some opportunities, and now it's our job as a department, everybody's responsibility, to find a way for one of these 3 guys, that Portillo, Slukinski, and George, one of those 3 guys, we need one of them to work out. So yes, it is going to be it's a tough situation, but we need one of these guys, if not both, or if not 2, to find a way in the next 3 or 4 years to be part of the Los Angeles Kings team.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm an opinionated person. I think I know what's right and what's wrong most of the time. I have not the foggiest idea what I would do in your spot, having to distribute those 5 goalies. That's a tough, one, and I don't even begin to know what to think.
I thought he did a pretty good job stick handling around the question.
Yeah, no, excellent work.
It's going to be tough, but it's a good problem to have. We're excited about the 5 goalies that we have under contract right now, and we just got to find a way of getting one of them, in the next 3 or 4 years, to be able to jump up and push those other 2 guys that are there right now.
Well, you guys have a pretty good track record when it comes to decision making with goaltenders. So this is the one area where I just throw my hands up and I go, listen, I don't know. I trust the experts, because I don't know nothing about nothing when it comes to it. Bill Ranford, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. It's never easy, but we put a lot of work at it, and I think our management team is a big part of it. So the combination between our management and goalie department, will do our best to make something happen.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Bill.
All right. Thank you.
We are continuing our summer evaluation series. Here to talk about the defense, Daryl Evans. Thanks for joining me today, Daryl. How are you doing?
Always a pleasure, Jess. Things are good. Long summer already, but
Yeah.
always nice
Yeah.
to do things like this. Makes the time pass a little quicker.
It's funny. I forget every summer, but if it weren't for the draft and dev camp, I feel like the summer would seem a lot longer, but we can break it up into sort of two portions, right? There's
Yep.
lead up to the draft and then aftermath of the draft and free agency. So we're going to get into the defense. There's 7 players I want to talk about today. And before we get into all 7 of them, I didn't really realize this as the season was going on, Daryl, but incredible health from the defensive core. Like, not a ton of injuries this year on the blue line.
Yeah, and considering they're a little bit on the older side as well, I think that it speaks volumes to, first of all, their conditioning and the job that the training staff did with the guys. I think there's no doubt that the Olympic break played to the favor
Mm-hmm.
of not only the Kings defensemen, but a lot of players across the league. I think there was a lot of guys that were banged up, and that 2 week break I think really helped them out. So it allowed them to kind of regather themselves, hit the reset button, and get ready for the push going down the stretch.
I mean, what made me really realize it was going back and looking at, the 7 players we're going to talk about and realizing that 4 of them played all 82.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about Angus Booth. He only factored into 1 game. But the first name on our list, Daryl, is Jacob Muvarari. And this is where it reached my radar because I knew he didn't play a ton. And I was trying to think to myself, well, was it anything, did they have some other defenseman that I couldn't think of who came up from Ontario? And the reality is he just didn't get any opportunities to play. I think even if you ask the coaching staff, they would say Jacob Muvarari didn't do anything wrong. But when you have 4 defensemen who play all 82, one who plays 80, and Drew Doughty played, 72,
Yeah.
there's just not many opportunities for a guy like Jacob Muvarari to get in the lineup.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate thing from his standpoint because it was nothing that he did or didn't do. When your blue line's healthy, you're going to go with your top players. But also, I think at times when you look at the game that because the Kings maybe didn't get the type of start that they were looking for, create a little bit of separation, they were almost in a must-win situation every night, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that forced or urged the coaching staff to play the guys that they had more trust with, which is only natural. And that's the lineup what they went with. And unfortunately, he got edged out more times than not, and didn't get quite the playing time that he would have liked to have had. And I'm sure even the organization would like to have played him more.
Now, he's an interesting case because he is an unrestricted free agent, or I think it's unrestricted. Maybe it's
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
and he's the type of player. I mean, he's been around in LA for a few years now, and listen, he is well loved by teammates, coaching staff, like he's just really, really well liked. And full disclosure, personally, I have a relationship with him closer than anybody else on the blue line. I like Jacob Muvarari. I can go talk to him in the locker room. We can have conversations that have nothing to do about hockey. So I am partial to Jacob Muvarari. Does his willingness to spend 60 plus 70 plus games on the bench not playing and then step in and still give you a solid effort, does that potentially make him a candidate for a contract extension?
I think from his standpoint, the way he plays. Um, I don't know if there's anything that separates his game from the other players that are in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of similarities. I think one thing that the Kings blue line really needs is more puck movers or more ability to be able to move the puck. I think they've got to get contribution, one of the lowest scoring blue lines in the NHL. So they're going to need more contribution, whether it means skating the puck out of your zone or be a little bit more of a threat with the shot in the offensive zone. I think that's something that we'll see what happens through free agency and trades over the course of the summer. But I think from more Varari's standpoint, he's probably at the stage of his career where he'd like to get an opportunity to have a more of a consistent role. And I would think there's probably a couple of teams out there that are maybe in a full rebuild or a team that's a little bit more in cap space, cap trouble, that would look for a contract by him. But I think he's the type of guy. Again, you know him, really well. I think I know him quite well as well. Getting to know him over the years. Very trustworthy, very good teammate, very predictable. You know exactly what you're going to get. He's got the flexibility to play a little bit of left and right. He's never going to hurt you. So he's one of those guys that I think every team could use. It's just a matter of, getting that contract before you get your foot in the door, or maybe he's got somebody on a team that's got some knowledge of him that would kind of take that step with him.
There was one game, I don't remember when it was in the season, but he hadn't played in a long time. He finally got in, and I think he played like 2.5 minutes or something. And I remember talking to him after the game, and he was like, yeah, it's disappointing, but what are you going to do?
Yeah,
I felt for him.
Yeah, no, things like that. That's disheartening when that comes up, because you figure if you're going to get into a game, you're going to get an opportunity to play, and again, because of the circumstances, the way the positioning where the Kings were and the way things were going for them, it didn't free up that time. And again, it was to no fault of his own, because he was prepared. I don't think you'll see anybody that is going to put forth the effort knowing he's not playing day in and day out. Get skated extra, do the drills that he's got to drill, and then be prepared to play whenever that time comes. So to his credit, he treated it as a complete professional, and that's what you have to respect from him. And that's why I think he deserves a chance, whether it be with the Kings or somebody. He's earned himself a chance to play more consistently.
Next name on our list, and I'm just going up from the bottom based on average time on ice. That's how I decided to order this. So next on the list is Cody Ceci. And Daryl, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Cody Ceci was this year's fan favorite to criticize and malign. And there have been years in the past where, whether it was Jake Muzzin or Yaroslav Modry or whoever it is, that every now and then there's a season where everybody picks on one defenseman. And in the past, I've sort of gone, yeah, okay, you know what? Fair enough. That player didn't live up to my expectations either. Daryl, I genuinely don't, and maybe this is just maybe I just don't know the game as well as I think I do. I didn't see Cody Ceci as being a huge drawback against the Kings. I didn't see him as being a particularly large strength. I saw him as being precisely what the numbers say he is, which is a sixth defenseman who plays less than 18 minutes a night. He kills penalties. He blocks shots. I don't know. I just thought he was exactly as advertised.
Yeah, I think the Kings maybe expected a little bit more out of him. Tough transition. You bring a new guy in. He's got not only new teammates, he's got a new defense partner.
Mm-hmm.
The systems are a little bit different, and he comes into an environment where the team didn't thrive. Had the team again been in a better position, that can maybe kind of camouflage his growing pains, getting acclimated. I thought there were a couple of times through the course of the year that he played exactly what you'd expect from him. A veteran defenseman, almost 1,000 games in the NHL. Just steady, very dependable, reliable. Of course, he's not going to skate the puck from one end of the rink to the other. Maybe expect a little bit more physicality out of him, but. Again, I think he'll be the first one to tell you that he didn't have the type of season that he was looking for. And I would expect, next year to be a lot different now that he's acclimated. He's got an idea of, the way the team plays, even though he played against him for so many different years, and had success against the Kings. I think if the Kings make the changes that they need to make, that'll help him being able to fit the role and fill the role that they expect him to play in. And, that's kind of a shutdown type of defenseman, and utilize his experience and his knowledge of the players in the league. And, not that he's going to play, 22, 24 minutes a night, but he should be able to give you a solid 16, 17 minutes a night and not hurt you.
I mean, the Kings struggled in net this season as compared to previous seasons. When Cody Ceci was on the ice, he's on the right side of 50% in every possession metric you'd want to look at. And I just, like I said, for a third pair D, I'm not sure what more. Now, I am on record as being incredibly biased in favor of Jordan Spence. So obviously there's a drop off between offensive production between the two of them. But I don't know. I still don't quite understand.
Yeah,
But
two different players
yeah,
completely. I think when you look at, when the Kings looked at the last 4 years being eliminated by the Edmonton Oilers, I think they felt that they looking to get a little bit more experience, a little bit more size back on the blue line. And in doing that, they gave up maybe a little bit of mobility and offense. So it's the team collectively as a group didn't score like they should. The goaltending wasn't as good as it was the year before as a group. The home ice, the record on home ice did not reflect what they did the year before. So there's a lot of factors that come in. I think because it was an Olympic year with a compressed, compact schedule. I think we're going to see Cody Ceci play in a different way this year, and which will be more favorable to the fans and where he'd be more productive on the team.
next up on the list then is the player I suppose most likely paired with Cody Ceci, and that's Brian Dumoulin. He played 17 minutes 45 seconds a game. More offense from him, but not a ton more. Um, you mentioned Cody Ceci having, new team, new system, new D partner. Same can be said of Brian Dumoulin. And Jim Hiller even said earlier in the season when I can't remember how many games it was into the year that he broke them up, as 5 or 6 games in or something. And they, the team had stumbled out of the gate, goaltending, D, everything. But Brian Dumoulin wound up playing in a lot of situations last season that I didn't expect. I was a little surprised that his minutes were so low per game over the course of the full 82. He's one of the 4 that played all 82 games. But Brian Dumoulin a lot more versatile than I anticipated.
Yeah, I think getting around the ice, the ability to be able to play the left and the right side. He can kill penalties with the length that he has. He can hold the line, deflect things to the outside. Again, utilizing his experience, and I think it was a tough pairing, especially at the beginning with both he and Ceci. I know there was times that they were looking at that. They might not start together. It might be Dumoulin along with Clark or something like that, and that just never came about. And because the Kings were chasing all year, it made it more difficult for guys like Dumoulin and Ceci, newcomers, to come in because not only got to acclimate off the ice, you've got to acclimate on the ice, and when that foundation on the ice, that machine's not moving as fluidly as you'd like, it's even more challenging for those guys. When the guys that have been here are challenged with it, it's going to be even more difficult for those guys. So again, I think with Dumoulin, again, he had a stretch during the season. I remember the goal that he scored in Columbus. I think there's probably a little bit more offense in his game, and I think we saw a little bit of that change as well when DJ. Smith, when he took over, I think the Kings became a more of an aggressive team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there probably is a little bit more flair. And whether the Kings changed personnel on the blue line or not, they've got to find a way to activate and contribute from the blue line because, all the teams that are succeeding, they have an active blue line. The opponent that the Kings had in the first round in Colorado, they led the NHL 233 points from the blue line. And that was light years from where the Kings were. So it impacts the whole game. It allows you to play a lot more time in the other end of the rink.
Assuming that the pairs next season, because all 6 guys are under contract, I'm assuming the pairs will look the same next year, which means we get presumably another season of Dumoulin and Ceci on the third pair. Do we think Brian Dumoulin can produce more offense, based on his skill set? Like, because Dumoulin and Ceci, they're not exactly ancient, but they're not young. They're on the
Right.
upper side of 30. 17 points out of Dumoulin, 9 points out of Ceci. Can that third pair, based on their without mixing and matching different pairs, can that third pair generate more offense on their own?
Yeah, I think they can. I think the Kings' defense was definitely, they underachieved. I mean, there's not one guy that I would say met the expectations or exceeded their expectations of the offensive output from back in the blue line. So collectively as a group, I think that comes with systems. You've got to activate them off the rush. You got to get involved in the cycle. More apt to shoot pucks as opposed to chip pucks into corners to keep possession. So I think that will contribute to them being a little bit more productive as a pair or as individuals, whatever happens.
Next name on the list, and this is one that I think really caught me by surprise when it comes to games played, and that's Joel Edmondson. Last season, he set a career high for games played in a season was 73. This season, 82. When the Kings signed him, Daryl, I expected he'd be one of those guys where you go, okay, well, hopefully you get a good season out of him, but he'd never played a full season, before this season. Last season, he played 73. Before that, his career high was 69 games that he played early in his career, 2 years back-to-back against St. Louis. So the fact that he played 82 games, good for him, but bad for, say, Jacob Mufurare or Angus Booth or anybody else. I thought what they gained in games played from Joel Edmondson, actually, he had more points than he did last year too. I don't know. I just felt like I noticed him less this year than I did last year.
Yeah, he and I think like especially being paired with Brandt Clarke, that's kind of what you're going to see with a guy like Edmondson. He's going to be there. He's going to be effective. He's going to be on the plus minus. He's going to defer to Clarke. He's going to be the security blanket for Clarke. He's going to make solid plays. He did set a career high with points. I like to see him shoot the puck a little bit more. He's got a heavy shot, and I don't think that they utilize that enough. I like to see him, be set for a shot a little bit more. But I think as a veteran player, and again, a credit to the training staff and the strength and conditioning staff. They did a great job in managing and monitoring his body and giving him what he needed when he needed for him to be able to play at a high level. And I know in talking to him for sure over the Olympic break that break was a big boost for him. He needed it because his body was banged up at that time. So feeling good. I think that like I say, I think if they find a way to get him to get more shot attempts at the net, I think things can happen because he's got a heavy shot. Even if the goalie makes a save, he's going to might not score, a ton of goals from back there, but I think his shot can create rebounds and make the defensive team break down structurally.
Yeah, to your point about the plus minus, he was tied for second on the team in plus minus at plus 14, led the D-Corps in plus 14. And there were a number of games where somebody in the press box would say something like, man, give it to Edmondson and let him take a slapper, and then he'd rip one, and then there was a deflection or a tip or a rebound or something. He wouldn't get credit for the goal, but the goal was 100% created off of his shot. I just wouldn't. I mean, for a guy who'd never played 82 before, I wasn't expecting it.
No, I thought, like I said, I thought he did well, and I think he and Brandt Clarke have built a really good pairing on defense. He's been somebody that, again, very trustworthy, a security blanket, so to speak, for Brandt Clarke, which has allowed Clarke's game to grow the way it has. And, they communicate well out there. I think they play off each other's, strengths and weaknesses. And, I definitely saw growth in that pair as, through the course of the year. I don't think that you can sit there and say at the end of the year that, Brandt Clarke or Joel Edmondson took steps backwards.
So that is then going to bring us to our next name on the list, and that is Brandt Clarke. And Brandt Clarke also played all 82 games. He averaged 19 minutes and 48 seconds of ice time. The stat that still sort of blows my mind, and I'm just going to look it up here real quick to make sure I have this correctly. As the season progressed, me and a couple other people were sort of tracking this stat, Daryl, but Brandt Clarke led the team in blocked shots.
Yep.
And if I'm not mistaken, at 5-on-5, because obviously he doesn't kill penalties, but at 5-on-5, amongst defensemen in the league, I'm sort of trying to vamp here as I pull up this stat. He was at one point, I don't know, first or second in the league amongst defensemen at 5-on-5 block shots, because like I said, if you take all strengths into account, there are players who kill a lot more penalties than he does. Shots blocked. Okay, so this can't be right. Sorry, I'm trying to find the statistic. But I mean, he for a guy whose game is offense, he blocks a tremendous number of shots.
And I think because this game is offense, that's where the hockey IQ, the hockey mind comes in. That puts him in a good spot defensively. Now there still has to be a willingness to do it, and that's a big perk for him for be able to put his body in front of shots. But again, his hockey IQ puts him in the right spot, and I think that's why he finds himself blocking so many shots. So I thought that was one of the areas in his game that took leaps and bounds, a big, huge jump there. I don't want to see that part of his game disappear. You mentioned that he doesn't kill a lot of penalties. I think in order to kill penalties, again, blocking shots is a big part, but he's got to get a little bit stronger. And each year he comes back, getting a little bit stronger, getting to know the league. But the strength, that strength factor, in order to kill penalties, you've got to be able to, push guys off the puck. You got to be able to defend that crease area, something that he continues to keep getting better at. So I would not be surprised if we saw more penalty kill time this year, because I think what that could do is could make the Kings a little bit more of a threat on a penalty kill as well, because not only can he defend, but he can maybe contribute offensively by getting involved off the rush or maybe off the cycle in the offensive end.
So I've finally tracked it down. Here's the numbers. This is all strength. Jake McCabe, 190 shots blocked on the season. Noah Dobson, 188 shots blocked on the entire season. And third in the league at all strength, Brant Clark at 185. If you correct that for even strength, never mind, power play and penalty kill, that 185 shrinks a little bit for Brant Clark because he does play on the power play and he does play on the penalty kill. But at even strength, that's 4-on-4 as well as everything. Brant Clark, number one with 179. Number two, Mackenzie Weegar with 162. Number three, Noah Dobson at 158, Jake McCabe for 152. So, I mean, not only is he number one at even strength, but he's number one by a margin. And, you drop down to the list, and by the time you get down to like number 10, you've shaved off 40 blocked shots. And by the time you drop down to 30, you've shaved off 60 blocked shots. I mean, he's really come along in that aspect of his game.
No, he's done a great job in it. Like, his gap control has been so much greater too. So when you're up tight against guys coming at you, that increases your chances of blocking a shot. The further the separation that you have, the guy shooting the puck or handling the puck, he's got more options. So when you try to put it through a guy, and again, because Clark's willingness to be able to stand in there and take the bumps and bruises, credit to him. Like I say, that's one of the strong parts in his game right now, in my opinion, is his ability to be able to defend and get himself in the right spot.
Now, the hitch in any conversation about Brant Clark right now is that he's a restricted free agent. So the Kings at some level have time to negotiate and figure out his next contract. But as far as I know, he's eligible for an offer sheet. And, offer sheets are a funny thing because people keep saying, teams won't use them. They're scared of them. It never happens. I don't know. St. Louis just snagged 2 guys off of Edmonton a few years ago. Like, it does. It's rare.
Yeah,
but it does happen. And Brant Clark's peers around his age group and his draft profile and et cetera are making a lot of money. And Brant Clark is now at a spot, Ken Holland talked about it a little bit at his season-ending press conference. The Drew Doughty, Brant Clark minute distribution is going to start to get more complicated before it gets less complicated.
I don't think so. I think when you look at it, I mean, Clark's minutes continue to keep going up.
Mm-hmm.
Doughty's minutes have slowly come down. I think when you look at this past year, and I think what could help escalate it a little bit, where those minutes will change quicker, is when the Kings power play with Brant Clark shooting the puck more and becoming a little bit more of a threat with the shot. I think you'll see those minutes even become greater, because I do think that Brant Clark is going to find himself getting some penalty kill time. I don't think Brant Clark right now is ready to take on 25, 26, 27 minutes a night. That's a big boost. You're looking, that's a huge boost, almost 30% more ice time. And he's also going to be playing against other teams' top players
Yeah.
So, his game's adjusting, but I think you'll see the coaches continue to gain trust in him on the penalty kill maybe a little bit. And again, if he can take control of that power play and that shot becomes a little bit more of a threat, now he becomes a guy that you're going to use in every situation. He's going to be your go-to guy. So he's trending in that direction. It's just and once he establishes that and that power play again, when Panarin came on board, things changed quite a bit at the end of the year in the power play. Then it got cold again. But I think when that power play develops consistency, you get Kevin Fiala back in the lineup. I think the Kings have the ability to really change their power play numbers going into next year. And I think Brandt Clarke can be a big part of that by shooting the puck a little bit more with the purpose of, trying to score, not just trying to get it through. Of course, that it's tough to score from just inside the blue line, but just like to see him put it down there just with a little bit more on it, because I think that it will prevent a lot of his shots from getting blocked, out in front of the net.
Well, he's their one consistent offensive threat from the blue line. So if the blue line is going to score more next year, there can't be any steps backward for Brandt Clarke.
Well, I don't expect him to step backwards. Again, I expect an increase in his ice time.
Mm-hmm.
Situational play, I expect an increase. I expect Brandt Clarke to be a little bit, I'm going to say bigger, stronger, but not that he's going to grow over the summer, but I expect him to put on a few pounds. He's getting a good feel of it, of playing against the other team's top players. And you watch your peers, the guys that are excelling, guys like Makar and that. You look at, if you want to be a top end guy, or a guy like Hughes, they're both phenomenal skaters. Brandt's got great footwork, maybe not as quick and shifty as those guys, but he's got great footwork. And Brandt's game, the strength of his game is between his ears. He sees and thinks the game a lot different than a lot of players do. So he's figuring it out, and of course everybody wants to see it happen sooner than later, but he's figuring it out. And once it all comes together, the Kings are going to have themselves a special player in Clarke.
Next up on our list is Mikey Anderson. He's 26 years old. He averaged 20 minutes, 34 seconds of ice time. And he's become, listen, I really like Mikey Anderson's game. I think he's a top pair defenseman on any team, but he's sort of become the de facto Drew Doughty partner at this point. Is it as simple as to say that's his role, is to be the Robin to Drew Doughty's Batman?
No, I think from Mikey's game, I think Mikey gained a lot of confidence, especially when Drew was out, last year, the year before there, when he was out. I think his game really grew and he took on a little bit more. I still think there's a little bit more offense to his game. We've seen him getting involved, off the cycle in the offensive zone, just again, filtering pucks towards the net, shooting with a purpose. That might be something that, you might see a shifting in pairs. Again, if the personnel remains the same, you might see, a shifting in pairs just to try and change the chemistry a little bit. But Mikey's a valuable player. Again, he can also play on his offside a little bit. He plays bigger than his size. Because he's played with Drew and being on that top pair defenseman. He understands playing against the other team's top players and what it takes, the commitment he takes, and he's willing to do that. But again, as the whole overall picture of the offensive game of the Kings changes, I think Mikey will become more active as well, and they need him to be. He's got to. His confidence has to grow that he can skate the puck out of his zone, and from the Kings' standpoint, their defense, the quicker they get back to their zone, because they're not necessarily the quickest skating blue line in the NHL. But if they get back quicker, get their toes turned up ice, that'll allow them to exit the zone in possession of the puck more and get it to the forwards. I don't think the Kings defense did a good enough job at transporting the puck and get it to the forwards. I think the Kings forwards, there's a lot more offense that come from that group if the defense can become part of the offense with them.
Mikey Anderson and Brandt Clarke are kind of opposite sides of the same coin. Brandt Clarke doesn't kill penalties yet. Mikey Anderson not getting any power play time. But Mikey Anderson has been sort of in that conversation as someday he'll wear a letter. Now, with the departure of Anze Kopitar, perhaps that someday is, whatever October 5th, whatever day the first game of the next season is. Do you think it's possible that the departure of Anze Kopitar gives Mikey Anderson more room in the locker room to be a leader and on the ice wear a letter, and does that perhaps elevate his game a little bit?
Well, I think Mikey, right from day one, again, just the fact that you're talking about him wearing a letter, I think those are characteristics that jumped out of his personality right off the bat. The way he conducted himself, the way he communicates with his teammates, the immediate respect that he had from his partner in Drew Doughty, probably mature beyond his years. So, I think he puts himself in a good position to put a letter on. Of course, there's a huge void there. And, even, from the Kings standpoint, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't name a captain to start the season next year, if they went with just alternates, because those are tough skates to fill. Nobody's going to be able to come in and be Anze Kopitar. And, maybe from the standpoint, again, whoever, the coach, management, however they come about it, they may decide just to rotate, the A's around a little bit and you see who emerges and who evolves to wear the captaincy next and take the Kings. But that doesn't change anything the way that Mike will conduct himself, whether he's got a C on his sweater, an A on his sweater, or no letter whatsoever. Adrian Kempe, the same thing. I think both players, they'll play leading by example, the way they conduct themselves on the ice, the things that they say in the locker room, the way they are in the locker room, the respect that they have for not only their own teammates, the opposing team, the game of hockey. They're leaders. That's in his blood. So one way or another, he'll be a leader on a team, whether it's with a letter to start the beginning of the season or not. Only time will tell. That'll be between management and the coaching staff.
And that brings us to another candidate to wear the big letter, and that's Drew Doughty. He averaged 23 minutes and 5 seconds of ice time this year. He only played 72 games this season. I say only because he was in, it's what, 3 of the last 4 seasons now, or 4 of the last 5, or 3 of the last 5 that he's had some kind of injury. He did play in the Olympics, so he didn't get that 2-week break. He's not on the cusp of retirement, the way that, let's say, Anze Kopitar was to start this past season, but it's within view. Like, if it's his final year of his contract, I don't expect him to retire at the end of the season. But if he doesn't retire at the end of this, now he could play like Chris Chelios, into his 40s, or who knows, maybe Gordie Howe and play 5 decades or whatever it is. But I mean, Drew Doughty, I don't think it's a knock on present day Drew Doughty to say he isn't 15 years ago Drew Doughty. Like, none of us are. We all lose a little bit off of our fastball. But Drew Doughty still plays on the penalty kill, still plays on the power play, still plays even strength, still leads the team in ice time, and has openly advocated for wanting the captaincy next season. But how did you feel about Drew Doughty's season?
Well, I think, Drew, and, talking to him through the course of the year, and, he's the first one. He'll take it, upon himself. He says, I need to do more. He says, I got to be better. And to his defense, I appreciate and respect that, because I've watched him over the last few years, especially with the injuries that he had, the work ethic that he put in to get himself to play in the Olympics, to get himself to play 4 nations. He went through a lot. And for a guy his age to be able to do that just goes to show you how much he cares. So there's no doubt that Drew Doughty cares. He leaves everything on his sleeve out there. Exactly where he's at, what he's thinking. He's vocal. He loves to chirp on the ice. He loves to pull his team into things. And, that's what you're looking for in leadership. And then, he'll try to back it up with his play. I think Drew, who right from day one has always taken greater pride in defending a goal than actually scoring a goal. And that's why he's still on the penalty kill. He might not be as quick as he was, might not be as strong as he was, but again, the mind continues to keep working, just like we saw with Anze Kopitar this year, the cerebral play. And you can't replace that. I think which will allow Drew Doughty to be able to play a longer career will be the success of the team. When you're down you're down and things aren't going well, that takes its wear and tear on everybody. If you're winning, that breeds that breeds energy, and everybody wants to play. And if this team gets back and bounces back the way they want to, I think you'll see a rejuvenated Drew Doughty again, and he'll be able to contribute. Whether his minutes come down a little bit, which they probably will, because I think even he'll recognize that he'll be more effective. Of course, there's going to be some nights when coaches are going to look down there and go, okay, bang, number 8, I know what he can do, and he can maybe give me 26, 27, 28 minutes a night, but he can't do it every night. And I think he'll be the first one to resolve himself to the fact that he knows he can't do that and play at the level he wants. And I don't think Drew's the type of guy who wants to go on the ice and pace himself. He's going to give you his all the time, and he wants to play against the other team's top players. So he'll do whatever he can in this offseason to prepare himself. And again, depending on the decision that coaches, management make, what they're going to do with the C, I'm sure definitely that his name is one of the candidates that they'll definitely consider.
Could Brant Clark playing more time, if Brant Clark does wind up taking some penalty killing shifts, and if those shifts come off of Drew Doughty's minute total, could that theoretically help Drew Doughty in those scenarios you're talking about?
Yeah, I think everything can help out. Again, first of all, Brant Clark's got to I don't want to say earn them, but he's got to be prepared to perform with those minutes. It's one thing to take minutes on, and let's say you don't see your production go up, or defensively, you become more of a liability. You still got to be able to play at that high level. So I like the way that they've been growing up nicely. I think this year they took a big leap, and a lot of it had to do with, again, the trust they had defensively, blocking shots, defensive zone and things like that, to sacrifice. He was able to compete one-on-one, getting stronger. His gap control was a lot better, as he continues to get the experience in the NHL. So there's no reason that shouldn't continue to keep trending in the direction that it's going. But he's got to, again, the Kings are a team that got beat out. They got swept in the first round of the playoffs. Each and every one of those players has to be, held accountable and know that they've all collectively as a group, they've got to do a little bit more. I don't think there's one player that was on the group there that, finished that last game that said, I did my job. I couldn't give any more. And that's not to say from lack of effort. It's just, I think everybody feels they got a little bit more to give.
Well, there's nothing to give for the rest of the summer because there's no games until September. I mean, I guess we'll see a different group of skaters on the ice for Dev Camp. But Daryl Evans, thank you for your time. Thanks for joining me. I always appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Jess, and enjoy your summer, and we'll look forward to chatting again soon.
Yeah, hopefully I'll see you around. I mean, I'm sure I'll see you at around Dev Camp.
Yes, you will.
In and around the building all summer. Thanks, Daryl. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.